Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Thank you for welcoming me into your computers. And it's an honor for me to be here to present to you the very first Teal Technology Tips and Tricks webinar. I can see from some of the chats that people are having some issues with sound. So that is continuing, please to keep continuing to comment, and we'll see if we can't get that rectified for you. If someone could just post if anyone can hear me at all, that would be great, so that we can try to figure out any technical difficulties before we go forward here. The reason that I chose this webinar for the very first one is this is a question that Teal Technologies gets all the time, and I mean all the time. What adapter do I need? This is my chip. How do I read it with the UP828 software or another programmer? What chip package is it? And so on. So I wanted to just do a quick presentation. I'm trying to limit this to about 15 minutes. A bunch of comments are coming in saying that everything is loud and clear. So I hope everybody can hear me well. And Denmark is in the house, so welcome, Denmark. I'm going to switch slides and some of the, let me get here. Let's see. This is new software for me, so bear with me here. And why will you not switch slides? There we go. So first thing I want to talk about is the software in general. So the UP828 programmer is the adapter and programmer that we use in our chip-off class. It's the one that we teach. It's a pretty well-rounded programmer for chip reads. And this happens to be the link for the software download. If you go to the link on the software, there's specific downloads for each individual programmer. So there's the UP828 if you took one of our older classes, and the UP828P if you've taken one of our newer classes. The UP828P and the UP828, the adapters for each are not compatible. So you need to know what software and hardware package you're working on. But once you figure that out, based on the hardware that you have, you can download the appropriate software package, and then you can start using the adapters accordingly. So to pick an adapter for your chip to read, you go up to the top and you pick the select option. This is going to select, it's going to pop up another window for you, and you're going to be able to make some choices based on the chip package or the chip markings that you have. So for instance, we have a SanDisk, and this happens to be an SDIN for C2-4G. And this is a VBGA 169 chip package. If you take the markings off of this chip and place it up into that part that's has the red rectangle around it, you can then narrow down your chip selection to pick this specific chip. So by entering in the SDIN for C2, you can pick the actual specific profile. So what this does is this is the actual programmer. So the UP828 we use to read, but is an actual programmer, and this is going to set a specific profile for your particular chip to read. If your marking is unclear, or when you've done your chip removal, you can't see the marking on the chip, this is the easiest way to guess the next letter. So it'll give you it'll narrow down your possibilities for you to go to the next letter or character on your markings. And by doing this, you have options that are already existing within the UP828 software that will give you the options. So for instance, this is an SDIN for C2, but SDIN or SanDisk has multiple chips. For instance, there's an SDIN 8D or all different options related to that. And you can also see that there's a 4G DDR, and a 4G _X4. The one that you want to select depends on the adapter that you have. And if you have just the one individual chip reader adapter, then you're going to pick the one that's highlighted in red. So this is going to give you a possible list of chip options as well as manufacturer specifications of that chip. So if you look down in that device info section, it tells you that yes, this is an eMMC chip, and it gives you a part number, a package number, and an order number. If you look at the order number, that's going to be the actual part number that you need to order this particular adapter for whatever chip you're reading. Adapters support multiple chips and multiple manufacturers. So this VBGA 169 is going to support any chip that supports the VBGA 169 chip package. And to order it, you can get that order number, which makes it easier for you to be able to get the exact adapter that you need. A couple of features that are useful when narrowing down your chip selection is selecting it by package. If you removed your chip prior to your research, which I do not recommend, but if you did and you know the package once the chip is removed, you can read it by its profile or its generic package. So that chip is a BGA 169 chip package, and you can go into the keyword section and just type 169, and it's going to list an option for the generic profile for a VBGA 169 chip package, and you can see it's highlighted in red. So a generic package will also support this. This is due to the makeup of eMMC chips, and because they have a specific makeup in the package and the chip and how it reads and writes and programs, you can use a generic profile for an eMMC chip. You can do this for eMCP chips as well. The next option is for a BGA 221. So in the previous slide, I just typed in 169. For this option, I did BGA 221, which is another type of an eMMC chip. And if you look under the profile, you can see that there are generic options based on the capacity of the chip, 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, 16, 32, and so on. So I would pick the one that matches my particular chip if I know the capacity. If I didn't, I would have to research that as best I can, or pick a larger profile so that I have a bigger dump. And I can use a generic eMMC BGA 221 package to read this particular chip. If I didn't know what package it was and I just wanted to narrow it down by eMMC first, then I can type eMMC up in the keyword section. By doing that, it's going to give me every eMMC chip profile supported for the UP828P software. And then if you scroll down, you'll go through all the different chip packages, 100, 169, 162, 221, and so on. So you have three options. You can do it by the package, the 169, 221. You can put in BGA with your option. And then there's a third option where you can just go in and do it by eMMC and your chip package. So what if you try to do this, but your chip is not actually listed in the software? Your chip is unsupported, or at least you feel it is unsupported within the software itself. So this is an example of a Toshiba chip, and this is an eMMC, and it's a BGA 169 chip package, and it is off by one letter. So if you look at the two that are highlighted, it says THGB MDG 5D 1L BAIT Tango and BAIL Lima. So if it's off by that one letter, I can use a similar profile. But in this instance, if I go and look at the adapter, it's a 169 chip package. So therefore, I can go back and use my generic eMMC 169 chip profile to read this chip. I don't have to do it just by the chip markings. I can do it by the generic profile that already exists within the software. Be careful that you don't limit the capacity. So if this happens to be a 16 gigabyte chip, you want to make sure that you're using a profile that is a 16 gigabyte profile or larger to be able to read your chip. That will work with eMMC chips, but it won't work with NAND chips. When you're using NAND style chips, you will have to pick either the exact match, or you can try using a similar chip number. So for instance, if I have an unsupported chip number or an unsupported chip profile, I can go and I can put in as many numbers that match and get a list of options. And if you look at the adapter in the package, these all happen to be the same package with the same adapter, but the numbers are off quite a bit towards the end. So what I would try to do is research as much as I can about my specific chip and get the closest or similar package, the closest or similar chip marking to match my particular chip. If I still have no support, well, then I may have to look at an alternative reader or an alternative programmer. But until then, I can try different packages to see if I get a good read or a good dump from my chip. Once I get a good dump and I can parse out any of the data or decode the data, then I know I'll have a successful read. But if not, and I don't have support, which the UP828, as good as it is, doesn't support everything, you may have to go into another programmer so that you can get a read from your chip. If you do have to pick a different option, meaning your profile isn't exactly listed, and you do pick a different profile, you may have to uncheck the check device ID. So when you go to read this chip, the UP828 is looking for the internal markings or the internal identification of this chip. And when it recognizes that, it's going to try to match it to your adapter. If you do not have the appropriate matching adapter to the profile, then it's going to say, or the chip to your profile, excuse me, then you may have to uncheck your check device ID and it will maybe still read. This is just one method of troubleshooting should you not be able to have this. So in the other screen and the other field, Maggie, is there a reason why you use the UP828 that requires no profile? I don't quite understand that question. Is there a reason why I use the UP828 versus the KLD adapter style that requires no profile? If I understand you correctly, why am I using a generic profile as opposed to the long individual profile? And if that's your question, because the eMMC profile is generic to support that chip package, and it's easier than having to look up the number or the actual profile of that chip. So whenever possible, yes, I do use the generic eMMC profile. I hope that answered your question. So why am I unchecking the check device ID? It's just one method of troubleshooting. And if I can't get my exact match and I'm getting an error that says my device ID doesn't match, this is how I would uncheck that. The access area also gives me options for potentially damaged eMMC chips or chips that you're looking to read. And I can uncheck areas that I want to bypass if I'm getting an extended CSD error or a boot partition 1 error. But I can't uncheck user area because that's obviously the goal of what we're trying to read. So if I'm getting an error in my user area, then I'm going to have to do some different types of troubleshooting. So let's talk about Micron just for a little bit. Micron does not like to conform to the other chip markings on the tops of the chips themselves. So this is an example of a Micron. It's a VBGA162. And Micron uses its own chip code or its own product code or chip marking. So that JW899 is specific to Micron individually. And you take that number and you go to the Micron site, which is listed here, and you will enter it in under the VBGA code. And once you do that, it's going to produce a part number for you. That part number can then be brought into the UP828 software, and you can then attempt to read your chip. But in doing so, if I didn't already know that this was a BGA162, which it shows me it is, I can use both the eMMC profile or the M229P ZZD so on profile. So I can choose either one. If I didn't know that it was a JW899, then I would have to look it up on the Micron site. However, some, not all, of the Micron chips are listed by both part number and manufacturer, part code or manufacturer code. So sometimes you're lucky where, as in this example, it shows them both listed. Or sometimes you'll only get the long manufacturer or part code and not the Micron number. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of research on your own. In doing research, there's a lot of ways to do this. And this is another question that we get all the time at Teal Technologies, and most of the instructors and staff are very competent of helping. However, just doing a little bit of research on your own is useful to find out what type of chip you have. So this is a Micron products page, and if you just do a search within their products page, you can find a lot of information about the chip that they have and the specifications. It gives you voltage, package, the BGA, and so on. So this is one source of information or one place to go where you can get some help in researching your chips. All the numbers on the chips mean something. It's sort of like a VIN on a car, and each individual character represents some type of profile or some type of makeup of that chip. So this is a Samsung NAND decoder, and it starts out with K, meaning it's Samsung memory. K9 is Samsung flash memory. And then each character after that represents something else pertaining to that chip: density, read, voltage, package, and so on. And then there are these brochures or PDFs or lists that are distributed that you can find online through the manufacturer that will break down exactly what each option is. So for small classification, you can see that it's, is it an SLC, single layer chip, multi-layer chip, what kind of chip, what the package is it a TSOP or a BGA, capacity, 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, or so on. So this will help you break down the actual makeup of the chip itself to help you decide what type of adapter that you will need to read this chip. Also, going on to manufacturer websites, you can look at more specifications. This just happens to be something from Samsung, and this is products that Samsung sells, so you can research through Samsung's sites and get information about the different chips that you're working for. So again, if you go into the UP828 software and you don't have any luck, or you can't find your information about your particular chip, you can go online to manufacturer sites for helpful information about the chip that you're trying to read so that you can learn more about it. Again, this is just an example of Toshiba, and this is that chip that I had on the previous slide, and it explains that it's a 153, 169 chip, and it even gives you the eMMC version, which is the latest version of 5.1. So by going to the manufacturer sites, you can also learn more about the chip itself. This is an example of a UFS chip through Hynix, which is another chip manufacturer, and it gives me the density and other information. So this says it's a 153 UFS chip. So if I wanted to read this particular chip or program this particular chip, it tells me it's a 64 gigabyte UFS 153. If you can't find what you're looking for through the UP828 or online, a lot of useful sources that I have found are other programmer sites. When going to the sites, this is an example of Data.io. When going to their sites, many of them have a device search option. Now, this happens to be support for their particular programmer, but it will tell you most of the time what type of chip you're dealing with. So Data.io has a device search area where you can put in the chip markings, and then it'll tell you, hey, this is a BGA 153, 16 gigabytes, and so on. Zeltec is another manufacturer of programmers, chip programmers, and they also have a device search option within their website where you can type in the markings from your chip and it'll give you options. Now, most of the time, they're going to tell you what adapter supports their reader, but if all you're looking for is the chip profile to be able to read the chip, then you have that option here. Another chip programmer is Elnec, and again, they have that option for you to be able to do a device search and an adapter search for your particular chip. I found it very useful to go to some electronic suppliers like DigiKey is an example. And many of them, if I'm looking for a particular chip, will actually have a data sheet associated to that chip. Now, a lot of times you're not going to find the same chips that you would see in necessarily some modern cell phones. But if you're looking at other components like any kind of an IoT device, a lot of times you are going to see some smaller chips. You're going to see a lot of NAND and NOR chips, and you can get a lot of data sheets from these electronic suppliers. So DigiKey is just one example, but there are many options out there where you can get data sheets. Speaking of data sheets, if you can locate your data sheet, it is one of the best places to find everything you need to know about your chip. So if you're doing research on your chip, a data sheet, if you can locate one, will give you everything about the chip. It gives you capacity, the part, power recommendations, package, pinout, and so on. This one gives you the eMMC version. This is 441. It tells you the data bus. It gives you a pinout. It gives you specifications and other information. This also gives you the density, and it gives you the data array of how it's put together. And last but not least, if you know nothing about your chip, it's always good to Google. Google is the best invention. Not only can you Google for any type of a chip and data sheet and manufacturer, but you can also look for images. So if you were to go up top and click on the images, a lot of times you could get an actual image of the chip itself. And then I just wanted to give a shameless plug for Bob Elder's Physical and Raw Mobile Forensics Group. This is a great source of information and support. And if anyone is interested in joining this group, you can just log on and send a request in, and you have to request access. And Bob will vet everyone for the site, and he will grant you access through his admin. That is the presentation in a nutshell. I hope it was useful. Try to keep it under 20 minutes to a half hour for you. Is there any questions that I can answer? See, I'm looking at the lists here to see if there's any questions.
Maggie, what I know, it looks like Ryan asked you a question privately, so I'm not sure if everyone managed to really get what his question was beforehand. So would you be able to just go over that? What is there a reason why you use UP828 versus KLD adapter style that requires no profile?
So so I answered that a little bit earlier. Why do I use the generic profile? Because it's easier, it's more simple. If I have an eMMC chip and I can obtain or use a generic profile, I don't have to worry about my chip markings matching exactly. I don't have to worry about my capacity because it's going to read from the very first bit to the very last bit or byte to byte, and I'm going to get everything in between. So when at all possible, I like to choose the generic profile. If for whatever reason there isn't one available, like when I'm reading a NAND chip, then I have to sort of fudge it and see what the best profile is going to be to match my chip. If I can't find support, then I'm going to have to move to a different programmer. The UP828 is my programmer of choice. It does pretty much everything I need it to do, but I have had to use other programmers in the past to get what I need to get from chips. Another question was, are you going to get these slides? Yes, you are going to get these slides. I had some technical difficulties prior to the webinar, and I wasn't able to upload the PDF for you, but we will figure out a way for everyone who was on here to get a copy of the actual slides from the presentation. Any other questions? I don't see anybody posting any questions. All right, Ken, do you want to give away the adapter? Is Kent there? Oh.
Sorry about that. My mic was off. Maggie, did you cover this question? UP planning on releasing any additional updates? Seems like it's been a while. Do you know?
They do release updates. They just don't update the actual application. So there have been updates that have had chip updates where it just doesn't appear that there's updates. I don't have that specific answer, but I will tell you that they've had the same release date listed on their website for some time, even though they do actually update their software. There was another question in here too. Let's see. I'd like to something chips on discovering proper alignment within the readers. So in the adapter, I can go back to that slide. Let me see if I can do that. So in the adapter, you'll see that little white circle. That white circle indicates pin 1 or A1, and your chip should be oriented accordingly. So there's going to be a dot or a caret, I call it, or an arrow that indicates your pin 1 on your chip, and it should be aligned properly to whatever the adapter says is pin 1. If you don't know that, or you don't know where your pin 1 is, then you can get that from your datasheet as well. But it's easiest just to line up your chip marking of your pin 1 to that white circle or white dot on your adapter, and that's how you would align your chip properly.
Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, if not, I would like to announce the winner of the UP828 adapter. So the winner is Adrian with the email address cheekyforensicsmonkey@gmail.com. So congrats, we will get in touch with you and you get to have the adapter of your choice. So thank you, everyone.
Adrian.
Yeah, congratulations. We're planning on having these seminars once a week. So we will send you an email on what the next topic is, and we will be in touch. Let's see. Yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to either myself or Maggie. And yeah, we'll be sending a recording of the presentation and the slides as well, so you can get any links that are in the slideshow. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good one. So shoot. Oh wait, hold on, everyone. All right, if you are still on, it seems as though Adrian doesn't have an adapter and that we need to redraw. So if you're still online, we can be able to choose someone else for the adapter. So 1 second. And the new winner is EOIN Bates. Sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce your first name, but it's EOIN Bates at abforensicslab.com. Congratulations.